Hello everybody, welcome to the week 3 of our tutorials. We are going to be discussing demand, supply and equilibrium in these tutorials. So we are starting off with a question number 1, which states, on a separate demand and supply diagrams for bread, sketch the effects of the following. A rise in price of wheat, B, a rise in price of butter and margarine, and C, a rise in price of pasta, rice and potatoes. In each case, state your assumption. So let's do this. First question under A. So we are looking at demand and supply for bread, and we are, under question A, we are experiencing a rise in price of wheat. So we have our initial equilibrium, so we have quantity on x-axis, price on y-axis. We have downward sloping demand curve, and we have our upward sloping supply curve. So in the case when the price of wheat rises, what you should know in this case is that wheat is used to produce flour, and flour is used to produce bread. So if our price of wheat rises, the price of flour will also rise, and finally the price of bread will rise. So this will make supply of bread this will lower the supply of bread because it will be more costly to produce bread. And in that case, our supply curve of bread will shift to the left. So this will be S1 and this will be S2. So we are experiencing a shift in supply curve to the left. Under B, we have that price of butter and margarine rises. So what we do is we consume butter and margarine with bread. So these goods, as you already learned on your lectures, are complements. They are consumed together. So if our price of butter and margarine rises, we will consume less butter and margarines. The demand for butter and margarine will be lower, and hence, at the same time, our demand for bread will be lower. So in terms of diagrams, we have quantity, we have price, we have our initial demand curve, D1, and we have our initial supply curve, which is S1. So if our demand for bread decreases, our demand curve shifts to the left, and we have D2 here. And finally, we have a rise in price of rice, pasta, and potatoes. So just think of rice, pasta, and potatoes as substitutes for bread. So if the rise in price occurs for rice, pasta, and potatoes, lower quantities of rice, pasta, and potatoes will be demanded and hence consumed. So if there are substitute goods, as you learned on your lectures, the demand for the substitute good will increase in this case. So demand for our bread will increase in the case where the demand for rice, pasta, or potatoes declines. So we have our initial demand curve, which is D1. We have our supply curve, and our demand for bread in this case rises, so it shifts to the right, and D2 curve is there. So that is everything for our first question. We are moving on to the second question, which states, which of these is not a factor that affects demand? So we have market structure, price of complements, personal preferences, and expectations about prices in the future. So the correct answer to this question is A. The market structure is not one of the factors that affects demand. We have question number 3, which of the following best describes the demand curve? The correct answer is under A, so it's the willingness to pay for a specific quantity of a good over a variety of price and quantity combinations. Fourth question states, which of the following will cause the movement along the supply curve? You already discussed this in your lecture, so everything that is price related causes the movement along the curve, whereas other factors cause the shifts in the curve. So the correct answer is A, an increase in price. Then we have question number 5, stating which of the following will result in an outward shift of the demand curve. The correct answer is an increase in income, assuming a normal good. So in case of normal goods, an increase in income leads to increase in quantity demanded of that good. Question number 6 states which is the price to quantity relationship typically depicted in a supply curve. So we should remember that our supply curve is an upward sloping curve, so there is a positive correlation between price and quantity supplied. Question number 7 asks us about the price ceiling. So a price ceiling would typically cause prices and quantity supplied that are too low. So the correct answer is under A. Question number 8, which of the following will not result in the shift of the supply curve? So again, as with the demand curve, everything that is price related is causing chain movements along the curve, whereas other factors are causing the shifts in the curve. So the correct answer is A, a change in price of the good will not result in a shift in the supply curve. We have our question number D, with question number 9, which is the next question, and it states the market rent of an apartment is $900. Imagine the city government passes a law that landlords cannot charge more than $800 for an apartment. What will happen? So we are having an initial price of $900. Now it declines to $800. So we know that the price will decline. In this case, we can actually draw this on a chart. It will be easier to understand. So question number 9. We have quantity and then we have price. We are not giving information on quantities, but we know that the market rent for an apartment is $900. So we have a price of $900. Now we have the new regulations, which shows that the maximum price that can be charged is $800. So the price is lower than the initial price. We have demand and we have supply. So what happens to the demand in this case? We had our initial demand, which is at $900, and in case of $800, our demand increases. Supply in this case moves in the opposite direction, so our supply falls, and then there will be a shortage because we have a difference between demand and supply. The market is no longer in equilibrium. So our quantity demanded in this case is greater than the quantity supplied, hence there is a shortage. So the correct answer is A, prices will decline, our quantity demanded will rise, our quantity supply will fall, and there will be a shortage. Question number 10 asks us, if supply falls and demand remains constant, what happens to the market equilibrium? So we can again represent this graphically. So we have our quantity, we have our price, we have our initial demand curve, we have our initial supply curve. So what we are told is that demand remains constant, so the demand curve doesn't change at all. But however, our supply curve falls. So our supply curve moves to the left. So S1 is there and S2 is here. So we have this movement in the supply curve. In this case, as we can see, so we have our quantities decreasing and we have our price increasing. So the correct answer is under A, that quantity falls and the price increases. And finally, we have question number 11, which is find the equilibrium price and quantity for this market. And we are given quantity supplied, which is 200 plus 50p, and our quantity demanded, which is given 1000 minus 25p. So we know that the equilibrium is when quantity supplied is equal to quantity demanded. So we are just going to plug these expressions into our quantity supplied equal to quantity demanded. So we have 200 plus 50p, which is our quantity supplied, is equal to 1000 minus 25p, which is our quantity demanded. So we want to bring all our p's to one side and all our numbers to the other side. So we will have 50p plus 25p. So 25 goes from here to this side. And then we have 1000 minus 200 going to this side. So we have 75p, which is equal to 800, and our p is 800 over 75, which is equal to 10.66. And we are also supposed to find quantity supplied or quantity demanded for this market. They are supposed to be equal. So if we plug our price to either quantity supplied or quantity demanded, we should get equilibrium quantity. So we have 200 plus 50 times 10.66. There's 1 6 missing here, so 0.666. And then that gives us...
why do you have 3 6s? I'm not pleased with that, Emma. That's the mark of the beast. She's I know.
So
just make that 10.67 or something.
Okay.
Oh, okay, go for it.
Okay, so instead of 10.666,
Yeah.
we are going to have 10.67. Which will give us quantity demanded, which will give us quantity supplied of 733. And you can do the same exercise for quantity demanded. It should give us the same result of 733. So that will be all for the week 3 of our tutorials. Hope you enjoyed it and see you in class next week.
Bye.